Imagine this: your own father hands the family business to your unqualified brother and tells you you're too emotional to lead. Yep, that actually happened. You sit there, stunned, watching everything you built slip through your fingers while a manipulative new partner schemes behind the scenes. It's messy, it's personal, and honestly, you won't believe what comes next. So, before we dive in, I gotta ask, where in the world are you watching from today? Drop it in the comments. Let's see. The fluorescent light above my desk had been flickering for 3 days. It was a sharp, stinging rhythm that somehow synced perfectly with the migraine trying to split my skull in two. I pressed the heels of my hands against my eyes, trying to block out the glare, and took a shallow breath. I should have been home, buried under blankets, battling the fever that had been hammering me for the past week. But the Q3 transition for Harrison Logistics was in full swing, and if I wasn't here, shipments would stall. They always did when I wasn't watching. The office door didn't creak. It swung open with this heavy, authoritative thud that rattled the frames on the wall. My heart jumped, a painful drum against my ribs. I lowered my hands and froze. My father, Arthur, was standing there, and behind him, leaning casually against the doorframe, was Lucas, my younger brother, bored as ever, picking at a loose thread on his cashmere sweater. "Dad," I croaked, my voice rough from the fever. "Is everything okay? I was just finishing up the Harrison manifest. I was going to head home in 20 minutes. Arthur didn't look at me. His gaze was fixed on the window behind me, where the truck yard hummed with the evening shift. He usually carried himself like a retired general, stiff and in control, but tonight he looked off, shifty, uncomfortable. "Leave the manifest?" he said flatly. I reached for my water bottle. "I can't. If I don't sign off on the hazmat compliance, the drivers can't leave the state. You know the rules." I said leave it, he snapped. The sudden volume made me flinch. Lucas chuckled a low, wet sound that made my skin crawl. My fevered brain was spinning. What is going on? Did something happen with the bank? I tried to focus on his eyes, searching for any sign of warmth, concern. But there was nothing. Just that cold steel I had only ever seen directed at union reps or competitors. "We're making a restructuring change," he said, clasping his hands behind his back. "Effective immediately." Restructuring. I laughed nervously, the sound cracking. "Dad, we're running at 90% efficiency. I just cut overhead by 15% last month." "Why would we restructure?" He stepped closer. "Because the company needs a CEO who projects strength, someone with the right image. I've decided to step down as CEO effective the first of the month." My heart leapt for a fraction of a second. We had talked about this, in theory. But then the words hit me like a hammer. I am handing the company over to Lucas. The silence that followed was deafening. My stomach dropped. Lucas, the kid who had dropped out of college twice, the one who rarely set foot in the office, was now CEO. My fever haze made the room swim. I looked at him. He smirked, smug, completely oblivious to the chaos he was about to inherit. "Lucas doesn't know the routing software. He doesn't know the clients. He thinks FABI stands for a keychain," I said, my voice trembling but sharp, pointing out the obvious. "He is my son," Arthur said, defensive, almost trembling with a strange anger. "This is a family business. It carries our name. It needs a man at the helm to secure the legacy. You've done fine with paperwork, but you're too emotional. You burn out. You're sick all the time. Weak. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something, but instead, I pointed at Lucas. You're a gambler. That's the only vision you have. Lucas sauntered into my space, lifted my nameplate, and held it like a trophy. He smirked. You were always more of a worker bee anyway. Leading takes vision. I froze. The papers were signed. Lucas was CEO. And as his first act, he was streamlining management, turning our company into something unrecognizable. My mind raced. Streamline meant cutting corners, cutting staff, cutting everything I had built. I didn't cry. I think the fever had robbed me of tears. My body moved like a machine, picking up items from my desk, sliding them into a cardboard box. A photo of Dad and me at a company picnic. My ergonomic mouse. A dried rose from Mom's funeral. Clunk, clunk, clunk. Each item hitting the box like a nail in the coffin of everything that I had worked for. And then they brought Veronica in. Lucas's fiancée, blonde, perfect, everything calculated. She walked in like she owned the place, spinning around, inspecting my boxes, dismissing everything with a flick of her perfectly manicured hand. Maybe a wet bar over there, she said, gesturing at my grandfather's old desk. We're going modern. I looked at her. The stack of papers I had memorized, and the Atlas system, every nuance of client handling, union protocols, emergency contingencies. I realized she had no idea what any of it meant, and neither did Lucas. Do you even know the PWA to the main server? I asked, my voice steady despite the shaking of my hands. Lucas scoffed. I'm the CEO. I give orders. I nodded, pretending. Of course. I picked up my box. It was light physically, but felt like a boulder. Veronica glanced at me impatiently. Lucas held out my company phone and keys. I handed them over. All of it. Kingdom given, trust handed, and yet they had no idea the control had slipped through their fingers. As I walked out, my mind began turning. Fever, exhaustion, betrayal, it didn't matter. They had forgotten one thing, the Atlas system. The lifeblood of the company was still mine, licensed under my name. They thought they had won, but the real game that hadn't even started yet. I sat at my desk, the fluorescent light above flickering like a relentless strobe. My hands moved automatically, picking up items, dropping them into the cardboard box I dragged from the supply closet. Each clunk echoed in the quiet office, a rhythmic reminder of what had just happened. A framed photo of Dad and me from the company picnic. Clunk. My ergonomic mouse. Clunk. A dried rose from Mom's funeral. Clunk. My body was moving, but my mind felt suspended, fevered, and disoriented. Lucas leaned against the doorway, smirking, watching me like some performance he didn't have to participate in. Hurry up, Elle, he said, flicking his hand dismissively. I didn't look up. The words didn't even register. He had no idea, not really, of the blood, sweat, and late nights I'd poured into this place, the hours, the sleepless nights. The systems I had built from scratch, they were invisible to him. And yet, suddenly, he had the title, Veronica. Her blonde hair sprayed into perfect submission, strolled in behind him, heels clicking on the linoleum. Oh, Alina, she cooed, with this fake sympathy. This is just so sad, but really, it's probably for the best. You look exhausted. Stress does wonders for wrinkles, you know. I felt a flash of anger, but my fever made it blur at the edges. I dropped a stapler into the box, its weight feeling like a punctuation mark to my humiliation. "We're going modern," Lucas added, leaning casually against my grandfather's old desk. Glass, chrome, sleek, no dusty old sentimentality. I glanced at him, feeling a strange mix of nausea and disbelief. This desk had history, family history, and they were already erasing it. My head spun slightly, fever making the room tilt whenever I moved. I steadied myself against the desk edge, taking a shaky breath. The betrayal was heavy, almost physical. I opened the filing cabinet, the key cold in my hand. Inside were the hard copies of the Atlas protocols, manual overrides, emergency contact lists for the ports, and personal notes on every major client. Everything I had built, every nuanced detail of keeping the company running smoothly. All within reach, Arthur had said. "Do not touch the files." And yet, as I stared at them, my mind raced. Technically, the company owned the data, but the intellectual nuance, the way to navigate strikes, rush shipments, client preferences, that was all in my head, or so they thought. Lucas wandered closer, peering at the cabinet, his eyes glazed over. "Do we really need all this old paperwork?" he asked, voice bored, like he was flipping through someone else's photo album. He didn't realize half of it was operational lifeblood, the spine of the business. Veronica rolled her eyes, spinning on her heels, surveying the office like it was a boutique hotel. "We'll need space for a lounge," she said, tone airy and commanding. "Wet bar over here, maybe." I pressed my hands to my face, trying to keep the nausea and fever in check. This was my work, my life, reduced to trinkets in a cardboard box, and they were casually redesigning it. The humiliation burned hotter than the fever on my skin, and yet, through it all, a strange clarity began to cut through the fog. I hadn't just managed the system, I had built it. Licensed it under my own name 3 years ago. The Atlas system, the core algorithms, the contracts with subcontractors, it was all mine. Protected, untouchable by Lucas and Veronica's clueless hands. I packed mechanically, each item a tiny act of survival. Framed certificates, a mug with a chip in it, my notebooks, pens, old receipts clunk, clunk, clunk. The office smelled faintly of coffee and disinfectant, a scent that had been my constant companion in these walls. The whispers outside the office told me the staff already knew. News traveled faster than light in a logistics company. I could hear muted voices, the hum of activity beyond the door. But inside, I moved like a ghost, fevered, exhausted, and oddly determined. Veronica came closer, tilting her head as she watched me. "Really, sweetie, you should let go," she said, voice honeyed, eyes cold. "This is just clutter. We're going to modernize, clean lines, bright spaces." I looked at her without speaking. My mind replayed the last 10 years, the late nights, coding in Python to build the Atlas system. Driving routes myself when drivers called out, missing weddings and anniversaries, ignoring my own personal life entirely. I'd given everything for this company, and yet here they were, acting like spectators at my defeat. Lucas, unaware, tried to assert himself again. "We need to free up cash flow," he said. "Your salary is excessive. You're a bit over the top." I swallowed hard, my fever making the words blur. "Do you even know how this system works?" I asked, voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. He laughed. I'm CEO. I give orders. I don't type passwords. Of course. Classic. Blind to the reality of what he had just inherited, I exhaled slowly, putting the last few items in the box. The cold clarity settled like steel in my spine. They could have the title. They could have the office. They could pretend to run the company. But they didn't have the code, the system, the leverage. And I did. I closed the filing cabinet with a decisive click, my fingers lingering on the key. The Atlas system was still mine. They didn't know it yet, but soon they would find out, and I would decide exactly how that played out. By the time I got home, the fever had started to dull slightly, but my mind was racing faster than ever. I poured a cup of coffee, the bitter warmth cutting through the haze, and sat down at my laptop. The first thing I did was call Marcus, a lawyer specializing in intellectual property. Not the company's attorney, but someone I trusted, someone sharp. My voice was raspy, but steady. Marcus, I need an emergency consultation. It's about the Atlas Logistics Protocol, the licensing agreement with Vance Logistics. There was a pause on the other end, the sound of typing, papers shuffling. I haven't heard from you in months. Everything okay? No, I admitted softly. I was fired 3 days ago, and now Lucas has taken over. He doesn't even know the license exists. I need to know our position legally. Marcus whistled low, that sharp exhale only he could make. All right, pull up the file. You filed the renewal as an independent contractor, right? Exactly, I said. 3 years ago, it was the only way to separate IP liability from carrier insurance. He paused, reading. Then he said, the license was granted to Vance Logistics for 12 months, renewable annually upon written consent from the licensor. Alina, it expires in 19 days, if not renewed. The software locks. The database becomes read-only. Basically, the system turns into a digital paperweight. I nodded, sipping my coffee, letting the weight of it sink in. I'm not trying to ruin them. Well, let's call it leverage. Lucas thinks he's in charge. He has no idea the code can function independently of him. He doesn't understand the system, the clients, or the protocols. Marcus let out a low chuckle. That's actually brilliant. Legally, you're under no obligation to renew. They could be liable for IP theft if they keep using it without a contract. I leaned back in the chair, letting the information settle, my mind tracing all the threads. For over a decade, I'd poured myself into this system. Every line of code, every protocol, every contingency plan. It was mine, even if they thought otherwise. And now, it could be my shield, my leverage, my chess piece. Draft a formal notice of expiration, I said, finally. Do not send it to the legal department. Send it directly to the CEO's email. Lucas needs to see it. He needs to understand exactly what he's dealing with. Understood, Marcus replied. Anything else? I hesitated for a moment, then added, do you know a good private investigator, someone who specializes in financial fraud? I need a full background check on a woman named Veronica Miller. She appeared 6 months ago. I have a feeling that's not her real name. Marcus laughed softly. I know a guy, former FBI forensic accountant, expensive. I have savings, I said, voice tight. I want every detail. I want to know who she really is and what she's done before she got involved with this family. Marcus sighed. Alina, watch your back. People like that, they get nasty. I know, I said, with a quiet certainty. I'm not worried about them hurting me. I'm worried about what they could do to the company if left unchecked. And I won't let that happen. I ended the call and sat there for a moment, letting the quiet settle around me. The coffee cooled. My fevered body still throbbed, but the fog in my mind had lifted, replaced with a sharp, almost surgical clarity. The pieces were all in place. The license expiration was the first domino. The PI would reveal the next threat. The email to Lucas would be the first step in turning the tables. I opened my laptop and began drafting the notices, carefully wording each sentence, making sure the tone was professional but undeniably urgent. Each word calculated to convey authority and inevitability. I knew Lucas didn't understand the gravity of the situation. He had no idea the control he thought he had was merely an illusion. And soon, he'd realize the truth in the coldest possible way. I pulled up the Atlas system protocols, scanning over them again. Every manual override, every client contingency, every critical emergency procedure I had coded in painstaking detail, it was all here. I owned the core algorithms, the licensing rights, the contractual clauses protecting my work, my creation. They had taken my office, my title, my paycheck, but they hadn't taken the system, and they never could, not without me. The more I looked, the more I felt the fever fade, replaced by a tense energy that made me lean forward in my chair. This wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about control, about protecting the lifeblood of the company and everyone who depended on it. The trucks, the shipments, the drivers, the clients. They needed someone who understood the system, who had built it, who could make it work. And that someone was me. I drafted the notice to Lucas, each line precise, unyielding. I attached copies of the original licensing agreement, highlighting the expiration date and the automatic lockout clause. I paused, thinking about the timing, the strategy. 3 days. That's all it would take for the system to shut down without renewal. 3 days for them to realize they were powerless. 3 days for me to position myself not just as the rightful operator, but as the only one capable of keeping this machine alive. Then I opened a new document, outlining the steps for the PI. Everything past company involvement, personal background, financial records. Veronica has seemed perfect, untouchable, untied to any wrongdoing. But I had a feeling, a strong one, and I would prove it. I wasn't just reacting, I was orchestrating, turning every weakness they thought they had exploited into a strategic advantage. I leaned back, finally allowing myself to breathe. The city outside blurred through the window as the sun dipped lower. The world didn't pause for my fever or my frustration, but that was fine. I had time, a plan, leverage, and the calm to execute it. Lucas had the title, but I had the system, and soon the game would change. For the first few days after handing over the office, I stayed out of sight. I didn't answer my phone, didn't respond to emails. Just let the fever burn itself out while my mind ran 1,000 miles per hour. And then I started watching. From a distance, through client messages, staff chatter, and industry updates, I can see it, the chaos blooming. First, the client calls. Oh wow, the calls. Mr. Henderson from Harrison Logistics was fuming, barking into the phone about invalid dispatch codes, trucks sitting idle in Ohio, shipments stuck in limbo. He didn't even know who to contact. Lucas, Chad, Brad, some kid on the floor pretending he was in charge. The confusion was palpable, and every message I read made me suppress a grin. Staff were starting to crack too, forklift drivers texting about overtime not being approved, warehouse supervisors complaining that nobody knew which trucks to send where. Oh no. The automated alerts for delivery delays were stacking up like a digital avalanche. Social media posts began trickling in. Google reviews dropped 4.8 to 4.5, then 4.2 in less than a week. I could almost hear the collective sigh of the company's reputation unraveling. Lucas was trying. I could see it in his frantic way. But it was all superficial panic, like putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. He didn't understand the Atlas system the way I did. Every query, every override, every manual check I had built into the code was being ignored or botched. Missed refreshes on the server protocols, mismanaged union negotiations, key client preferences overlooked. It was almost beautiful, in a twisted, ironic way. This was what happens when someone has the title but none of the substance. Veronica was, of course, oblivious to the operational meltdown. She was too busy redesigning offices in her head, picking drapes, imagining lounges. I could almost hear her saying, "It's all fine, Lucas, just keep smiling." And Lucas, desperate to prove competence, was nodding along, doing absolutely nothing productive. I watched client after client email confusion, frustration, even threats to take business elsewhere. Some accounts were critical, like Harrison Logistics, and I could see them teetering on the edge. Yet, I didn't intervene, at least. Not yet. I was patient, watching, learning how deep the incompetence went, letting them spiral just enough to show the reality without harming the underlying structure. Messages from staff flooded in. "Who do we contact now, Alina? We're stuck with invalid codes. We can't ship without your signature." Each ping. Each notification was a pulse of satisfaction mixed with a heavy dose of frustration. It wasn't about gloating. It was about watching the gap between capability and title. Lucas had the title, yes, but none of the respect, none of the knowledge, none of the relationships that made the company tick. I checked the system logs at home. Oh wow. Attempt after attempt to bypass my controls. Clumsy, brute force attacks. Someone must have hired a cheap IT firm to try to hack the Atlas server. None of it worked, not a single breach. Every failed attempt was a silent reminder the core of the company, the real engine, was mine. And it always had been. In the quiet of my apartment, sipping cold coffee, I felt a mix of emotions. Satisfaction. Yeah. That their incompetence was fully exposed without me lifting a finger. Restraint, definitely. Because I knew better than to step in too soon, I had to let the system and the people prove the gap themselves. Strategic patience was key. I didn't want a messy showdown. I wanted clarity. Undeniable proof that the title meant nothing without substance. Industry chatter confirmed it. Word spread about delayed shipments, missing trucks, and staff dissatisfaction. Rumors, whispers, discussions at competing firms. Lucas's ego was taking the hits I had expected, and Veronica's manufactured confidence was starting to crack under the pressure. Oh wow, they really had no idea. I made notes, quietly, almost like a chess player observing a novice make poor moves. Each mistake documented, each delay noted. Clients were frustrated, but still loyal at least. Some of them. Staff were anxious, questioning leadership, some already considering jumping ship. The numbers painted the picture: late deliveries, unhappy clients, unpaid invoices, and a rapidly declining review rating. And I did nothing, at least outwardly. Inside, I was planning the next moves, calculating how long it would take for them to recognize that title alone couldn't sustain the business. 3 days, maybe 4, before the first real cracks appeared in their confidence. That's when I'd step back in, not to rescue them, but to regain control in a way that was entirely mine. Watching all this unfold, I felt a fever finally leave my system. The exhaustion faded just enough for clarity to settle in. This was the moment I had waited for, the demonstration of reality versus illusion. Lucas thought he was in charge. Veronica thought she could manipulate and redesign without consequences. And now, the world they were trying to command was showing them exactly how incapable they were. I smiled faintly, almost to myself, not gloating, not really, just understanding. This was strategic observation, and soon the leverage would be undeniable. Every mistake, every failed override, every client complaint, every staff panic was a reminder the company could run without them only if someone competent controlled the engine. And that someone was me. It was messy, frustrating, and a little satisfying all at once. I sat back, sipping my coffee, and let the storm unfold, knowing exactly when and how I'd make my next move. I couldn't sit still. That private investigator report sat in my inbox like a ticking bomb, and I knew the second I opened it, my world would shift. Subject: Veronica Miller. Page 1, page 2, by page 5. I was staring at a name that didn't exist. Her real name, Vanessa Ray. Every page after that was a blueprint of deception, fraud, and embezzlement spanning 3 states. Pattern after pattern: family-owned businesses, lonely or aging patriarchs, her weaving herself into their inner circles, then liquidating assets for personal gain. Portland, a construction firm. Nevada, a bakery chain. Each company left in ruins. Each time she vanished with a chunk of the money. And now she was here, in my office, ready to do the same thing to us. I felt my chest tighten. This wasn't just about being fired or titles anymore. This was about stopping a professional con artist from destroying the livelihoods of everyone at Vance Logistics. The drivers, the mechanics, the staff they depended on this company for their lives. And she was about to gut it. My fingers shook slightly as I printed the report. Each page a confirmation of my worst fears. The auction listing was live. Fleet liquidation, 50 semi-trucks, immediate cash purchase required. Oh no, this can't be happening. I shoved my laptop into my bag and left my apartment in a blur. Ignoring traffic rules, my heartbeat hammering in my ears. When I arrived, the office parking lot was nearly empty, but I didn't care. Adrenaline surged through me, sharpening my focus. I could hear shouting even before I reached the executive suite. "You can't sell the trucks, you idiot. We have contracts." That was Dad, frantic, panic lacing his voice. "We need the cash. Dad, Alina is going to shut us down tomorrow," Veronica said, calm, calculating. Lucas yelled something back, trying to mediate, but it was clear he had no idea what was happening. I kicked the door open, and for a moment, all 3 froze. I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. I held up the printed PI report and said, "She's lying to you. Read this." Lucas blinked, utterly stunned. "Wait, but this can't be real." His gaze darted between me and Veronica, confusion and panic dawning. You're lying, right? Veronica's smile faltered. Just a flicker, then snapped into a blank, controlled expression, but I could see her mask was cracking. I began walking toward Dad, flipping through the report. Dad, look. Her name isn't Veronica, it's Vanessa Ray. Look at this history. Construction firms, bakeries, she's done this before. She manipulates families, convinces them to sell assets, takes her cut, and disappears. And right now, she's trying to do it to us. She's not here to help. She's here for money, for our trucks. Dad's hands trembled as he reached for the pages. His face paled, the weight of the revelation crashing down. Vanessa, he whispered. His authoritative presence, the one that had defined him in the office for decades, melted under fear and realization. Lucas's eyes widened, panic overtaking him. What she said this was a misunderstanding, that it wasn't what it looked like. I shook my head. No, it's a pattern. And if we don't act now, the fleet gets sold, the company's assets vanish, and everyone working here loses their livelihoods. Drivers, mechanics, office staff, they're counting on this company, and she knows it. Veronica tried to interject, voice sharp, calculating. It's just a precaution, Elena. We're not selling anything yet. But the fear was faintly visible around the edges of her eyes. The mask was cracking. She realized I wasn't fooled, that I had uncovered her plan. Lucas looked between us, his face paling and the understanding slowly sinking in. The illusion of authority he had clung to was collapsing around him. I stepped closer to Dad, calm but urgent. Dad, read the mugshot on page 4. See it for yourself. This is the woman you've trusted, the woman telling you to sell the trucks. Look at her previous targets, the fraud, the embezzlement, the identity theft. This is happening now, and if you don't stop it, it's irreversible. Arthur gripped the desk, trembling. He had always been confident, stoic, in control. Now he was stripped bare of certainty, staring at the damning evidence. Lucas sank into a chair, fear and guilt overtaking his initial panic. He had no control, no understanding, and now, no excuses. I turned back to Veronica, holding the report like a shield and a weapon. You're done here. You will not sell these assets, not the trucks, not the land, not anything. If you attempt to, the authorities will be involved, and I have the documentation to prove your pattern of fraud. Her composure faltered further, and I could see the calculations in her mind, how quickly she could escape, what leverage she had, and now what she had lost. Lucas's voice trembled, small and uncertain. Is this true? His confidence gone, replaced by panic. I nodded, steady, showing him the pages. He finally saw at the web of lies, the stakes he had never understood. I glanced at Dad, who was pale, hands shaking as he absorbed the gravity of his oversight. This is why I warned you, I said, voice measured, urgent. It's not about offices or titles or who's CEO. It's about competence and vigilance. If you sell these trucks now, everyone loses, and she walks away rich. But we can stop it right now. We need to act immediately. The room was silent except for my voice and the soft rustle of pages. Veronica's eyes flicked to the door, to Lucas, to Dad, trying to regain her composure, but the cracks in her mask were undeniable. Lucas looked at the papers, at me, at the reality he had ignored. Fear, guilt, and shock etched his face. Dad finally lifted his gaze from the pages, meeting mine with the heavy realization of what he'd nearly allowed. I took a step closer to Lucas. He wanted to be CEO. You have the title, but not the understanding, not the vigilance, not the experience. And now you're being played, just like Dad. It's not too late to fix this, but you have to listen. Immediately. Veronica moved, trying to regain control, but her movements were tentative, defensive. The game was over for her. I had exposed her, laid the facts bare, and everyone could see it now. Lucas sat frozen, Arthur trembling, and Veronica realizing the illusion of power had collapsed. I handed the report back to Dad. Read every word, every case, every fraud. She's a professional con artist. We cannot allow her to sell the trucks or liquidate any company assets. The auction listing is live. We have to act now, or we lose everything. Arthur's hands shook as he held the report, absorbing the full scope. Lucas sank further into his chair, the weight of inaction crashing down. Veronica finally looked uncertain, her eyes darting for an escape route that wasn't there. I stood firm, calm, and precise. The room was thick with tension, fear, and the weight of revelation. The stakes had never been higher. My body was steady, my mind clear. I wasn't just confronting them, I was orchestrating the defense, halting the immediate threat, and reclaiming control over what mattered. Every second, every page, every word solidified that this was my move, and I had to act quickly, decisively, and smartly. This was it, the culmination of planning, observation, and patience. Veronica had underestimated me. Lucas had overestimated himself, and Dad had been blind to manipulation. The truth had landed, and now, with the report in hand and the stakes laid bare, I had the leverage, the clarity, and the authority to stop the liquidation, save the company, and finally confront the chaos that had been brewing in my absence. The room was mine for the moment, tense, silent, but waiting for the next move. The moment I walked back into the office, I felt the tension like a live wire humming through the walls. Lucas, Arthur, and Veronica were clustered near the conference table, papers scattered, voices raised, and the usual chaos I'd predicted playing out in real time. But this time, I wasn't frantic, I wasn't feverish, I was calm, cold, calm, calculated. Every step, every word, every move had purpose. I had leverage, and I intended to use it. I set my briefcase down on the polished mahogany table, the weight of it almost symbolic. Inside was more than papers, it was control. The Atlas system license, the core IP, the algorithms I had built, and the contracts that ensured that only I could authorize its continued operation. Lucas had the title, but he didn't have the keys to the engine. I was about to become very clear. I looked at them, calm, letting my gaze settle on each one. "All right," I said, letting the word hang in the air like a warning bell. "We need to talk about the future of the company." Lucas opened his mouth, probably to argue, but I held up a hand. "No interruptions. You'll have a chance to speak. But first, you need to understand the situation." Veronica raised an eyebrow, smiling thinly, trying to assert control. "And you are?" she asked. Tone clipped. I ignored the question and focused on Lucas. He looked nervous, the first genuine fear in his eyes since he took the title. "This is the Atlas system," I began, tapping the stack of papers on the table. "The software that runs every operational process of Vance Logistics, the routing protocols, client databases, Emergency overrides, it's all here. And legally, the license is mine, not the company's. Not you, Lucas, mine. Without my authorization, the system will lock in 72 hours. Drivers won't leave, shipments won't move, clients will be stranded. I let that sink in. The room went quiet. The clock on the wall ticked audibly, each beat punctuating my next words. Which means, effectively, you have 3 days to negotiate with me, or the company grinds to a halt. Now, let's talk options. Lucas blinked, swallowing hard. Wait, what do you mean? You can just lock us out? His voice was shaky, the bravado evaporating. Exactly, I said. The title doesn't mean anything if you can't operate the company. And right now, only I can make it function. So let's be clear, I'm not here to destroy Vance Logistics. I'm here to make sure it continues. But under terms that reflect who actually built and controls the system. Arthur's hands were shaking, gripping the edge of the table. Alina, he started, but I cut him off. Dad, let me be clear. This isn't personal. This is business. You trusted Veronica and Lucas to handle things. You underestimated the complexity. That's fine. But now, the leverage is here, and we have to use it to stabilize the company immediately. Veronica bristled. You can't do this. This is sabotage. Her voice pitched higher, but her hands trembled slightly, betraying her calm exterior. I leaned forward, voice steady, each word deliberate. Not sabotage, protection. The software is mine, the license is legally binding, and the terms are simple. To continue operations, to prevent the system from locking. A corporate licensing fee must be paid to me, $50,000 a month, paid quarterly in advance, take it or leave it, 3 days. If the system locks, the company halts. Lucas's face went pale. 50,000. We can't afford that. I raised a brow. Oh, I think you can. Remember the margins we were running. And let's be honest, the margins were thicker when I was managing overhead. You wanted a modern company. Lucas, modern software costs money. Take it or leave it. The clock is ticking. Arthur opened his mouth. Tried to speak, but I continued. You're scared. I get it. But this isn't about fear. This is about competence. The title doesn't protect the company. The relationships, the knowledge, the IP, that's what keeps Vance running. And that is mine to manage. I could see the tension radiating from Lucas. He knew, finally, that the office, the title, and the shiny suits meant nothing if he couldn't make the company function. Veronica, meanwhile, was calculating, trying to figure if she could escape or manipulate a new angle. But the PI report and the real-world leverage had stripped her of credibility. The mask was gone. I pulled out the licensing documents, sliding them across the table. Here's the official license agreement, signed 3 years ago by Dad as part of a vendor contract, effective immediately. This expires in 72 hours unless renewed. Renewal requires my consent. Now, if you want the company to run without disruption, you'll abide by the terms I set. If not, the trucks stop, shipments halt, clients are stranded. Lucas swallowed. You're holding the company hostage. No, I said, calm but cutting. I'm enforcing the law. I built the system. I own the IP, and the law is clear. You can either pay for continued use, under terms I set, or face operational shutdown. That's it. No drama, no theatrics. Just facts. Arthur finally spoke, voice trembling. Alina, this is heavy. I know, I said, softening my tone slightly. But it's the reality. The company cannot function without the system. You didn't understand that when you handed me the office. Now, you do. And you have a choice: comply or see the consequences. I watched Lucas fumble, trying to find words, trying to assert some illusion of control. But the room was silent, every second punctuated by the inevitability of the system's authority. I was calm, patient, strategic. Every glance at my watch, every page of the licensing agreement was a reminder of the ticking clock. And they all knew it. Veronica finally spoke, voice tight. "We can get new software, rewrite it." I laughed. Cold, sharp. "Sure, good luck migrating a database of this size in 3 days. While keeping operations live, you'll need months. You have 3 days. Do the math." Lucas slumped, realization sinking in. He had the title, but the company was running on my terms now. Arthur, pale and shaken, nodded slowly, recognizing the gravity. Veronica's eyes flicked between us, her facade finally crumbling. The power shift was complete, not through brute force, but through leverage, knowledge, and strategic application of intellectual property. I closed my briefcase. Finality in the gesture. The terms are simple. Renew the license, maintain operations, and pay the agreed fee. Ignore this, and the company stops. It's not personal. It's competence and control. Now, let's decide. Lucas, defeated, muttered, "We will comply." I smiled faintly. Good, because competence always wins over titles. The tension in the room eased just slightly, but the clarity had settled like steel. The Atlas system hummed under my control. The stakes had been high, but the strategy was sound, the leverage undeniable. And finally, the company's lifeblood was in competent hands. Mine. They had the office, the title, and the shiny suits, but I had the engine and I intended to protect it. The first morning I returned to the office with control of the Atlas system felt surreal. The fluorescent lights, the hum of computers, the beeping forklifts, it was all familiar, yet everything had changed. Lucas and Veronica were already there, faces pale, tense, the residual panic of the past days still clinging to them. But this time, I wasn't stepping in as the fired employee, the sidelined sister. I was the one in charge, calmly, decisively, and with the full authority to ensure the company didn't collapse. I walked through the warehouse first, nodding to drivers, mechanics, and staff as I went. Big Mike, our union foreman, was leaning against a forklift, arms crossed, frowning as he glanced at his clipboard. "Morning, Mike," I said, trying to keep it light despite the tension. "How's everyone holding up?" He raised an eyebrow, skeptical, but the relief in his eyes was unmistakable. "Better now that you're here," he muttered. I gave a small smile, acknowledging the silent trust they had in me. It was subtle, but it mattered. They knew competence when they saw it, and I intended to remind them what that looked like. Back in the office, I immediately logged into the Atlas system. The dashboard lit up green, confirming the server protocols were fully operational. Every routing plan, every client detail, every override function all mine. I started sending updates to the key clients who had been stranded or confused over the last few days. Mr. Henderson from Harrison Logistics was first. I drafted a concise professional message explaining the temporary disruption, acknowledging the miscommunication, and assuring him that his shipments would be moving within the hour. I added a personal touch. the kind only I could provide, referencing his prior preferences and previous issues only I would know. Within minutes, the first replies trickled in. Gratitude, relief, subtle relief, and trust returning. "Thank you, Elena," one client wrote. "We were concerned, but glad to hear things are back on track." I allowed myself a brief exhale. The company was stabilizing already, the engine I had built firing exactly as it was supposed to. There was satisfaction in that calm, measured, and deeply human. Next, I gathered Lucas and Arthur in the conference room. Lucas fidgeted, Veronica hovering nearby, still attempting to project authority. I kept my voice calm, steady, conversational. "Lucas, the title alone doesn't run the company. You have to learn the processes, understand the relationships, and respect the protocols. Right now, you've seen what happens without that understanding." I let a pause hang in the air, letting the lesson sink in. Arthur, still recovering from the shock, nodded slowly. "You were right," he admitted quietly, the weight of his previous mistakes evident in his tone. I underestimated the complexity. "It's not about blame," I said, keeping my voice firm but forgiving. "It's about moving forward. Everyone has a role. The company depends on competence, communication, and understanding. If we're aligned, we can ensure operations are smooth, employees are supported, and clients remain confident in us." I assigned Lucas specific, manageable tasks, giving him exposure to key operational processes without allowing him to jeopardize the system. Veronica was effectively sidelined, her influence neutralized by clear boundaries and oversight. The tension in the room eased slightly as responsibilities were clarified and lines of authority established. I kept the tone casual, conversational, not punitive, just firm and direct. I turned my attention to the staff. In small meetings, I walked through the Atlas system, explaining changes, updates, and new safeguards. I listened to their concerns, acknowledged frustrations, and provided immediate solutions. Every interaction was a mix of competence, empathy, and reassurance. By mid-morning, I could feel the office atmosphere shift muted panic, transforming into cautious optimism. People were breathing easier, trusting the leadership again. Client issues came next. I handled each personally at first, because no one else could. Phone calls, emails, direct instructions to dispatchers. Each resolved problem was a small victory, a restoration of faith. Yes, the Ohio trucks are moving. Yes, the Detroit route is corrected. Yes, I've confirmed with the port authorities. With every call, every confirmation, I felt the weight of responsibility balance with the satisfaction of mastery. The chaos that Lucas and Veronica had nearly invited was now under control. Each crisis met and neutralized. By the afternoon, I convened a short meeting with key department heads. I outlined a temporary restructuring plan to prevent further disruptions, but I did it conversationally, naturally. We'll rotate oversight for Q3 shipments, ensure redundancy in approvals, and I'll personally review any manual overrides for the next week. We'll also implement a double-check system for client communications, just to be safe. The heads nodded, visibly relieved at the clarity and decisiveness of the plan. Their trust in me, built over years, was now unshakable. Throughout the day, I checked in with Lucas and Arthur periodically. Each interaction was a teaching moment. Lucas, Remember, the key with the Atlas system isn't just the code, I said during a walkthrough as of the operations floor. It's the relationships, the vendors, the drivers, the port authorities. You need to understand that. Lucas swallowed, nodding. I see that now. It's more than I realized. I let the words hang, letting him internalize the lesson. Exactly. Titles are meaningless without competence, and right now, competence runs through me. But you can learn if you pay attention. By evening, the operational crises were largely resolved. Shipments were moving, clients reassured, staff motivated, and the Atlas system functioning perfectly under my guidance. I walked through the office one last time, pausing to glance at the drivers, the dispatchers, the clerks. They were working smoothly, confidently. The tension of the past week replaced with a calm focus. I felt a quiet, human relief settle over me, a mix of pride, satisfaction, and natural ease. I had done it. I had stabilized the company, restored authority, and reasserted control without chaos. I checked in with Dad one more time. He was seated in the boardroom, exhausted, humbled. I pulled up a chair next to him. Everything's back on track. Dad, I said softly. He looked up, his eyes weary but grateful. Elena, I don't know how to thank you. I see now. I was blind. I smiled faintly. It's okay. The company matters more than pride. Dad. And it's not just about me running it. It's about making sure everyone can do their jobs safely, effectively, without disruption. We learned a hard lesson. He nodded, leaning back. You've restored faith in the company, in the people, in me too. I reached out, squeezing his hand briefly, acknowledging the fragile reconciliation of authority and trust. Late that evening, I took a moment in my grandfather's office. The chip in my mug, the flickering fluorescent light, it all felt grounded, familiar. I allowed myself a small smile, looking over the screens showing the Atlas system humming along. Green indicators lighting up every operational metric. Clients moving, shipments routing perfectly, staff efficiently handling logistics. Everything was working as it should, under my steady hand. The day had been long, exhausting, but for the first time in weeks, I felt in control. The office was calm, operational crises resolved, authority firmly re-established. Satisfaction wasn't just about victory, it was human, tangible, a relief that all the systems I had built were functioning as intended. The chaos of the past days, the betrayal, the manipulations, all of it had been countered with strategy, calm authority, and a clear vision. And now, finally, I could sit back, at least for a moment, and breathe in the quiet satisfaction of competence restored, lives stabilized, and a company once on the brink, safely back in capable hands. 6 months later, the office felt like a different place, but also strangely familiar. The hum of the computers, the beeping of forklifts, the chatter of drivers, it was all there, but calmer, steadier. The company had stabilized, shipments ran on time, clients were reassured, staff knew their roles, confident and efficient. Big Mike even cracked a smile when I handed him the updated overtime schedule. It was small, but it felt like a victory, a moment of human relief that all the chaos had finally settled. Lucas was still around, of course, but he'd changed. The ego that once filled every room had deflated. He was quieter, more attentive, asking questions instead of giving orders he didn't understand. I saw him on the floor last week, explaining a routing error to a driver without glancing at the manual. He was learning, humble in a way he never had to be before. I couldn't help but feel a mix of amusement and satisfaction. It wasn't revenge, really. It was just consequences catching up with reality. Dad had officially retired. He came in on Tuesdays now, not for meetings or decisions, but to have lunch with me and inspect the warehouse. Mostly, he told stories to the new mechanics, laughing quietly, a shadow of the tension he had carried before. He looked healthier than he had in years. Seeing him finally at ease was, well, it was a quiet reward for all the turmoil we'd weathered. Veronica Vanessa Ray, as the authorities now called her, had been arrested in Arizona. She'd been caught trying to flee with a suitcase full of jewelry purchased with the corporate card. A letter from jail came addressed to Lucas, asking for money for her commissary account. I didn't even glance at it. I placed it in the shredder, right next to the restructuring plan she drafted. That felt like a small, perfect justice. No grand gesture needed, just the natural course of law catching up to deceit. Sitting at my grandfather's desk, the chip in my mug still there, the fluorescent light flickering occasionally, I could finally take a breath. The Atlas system hummed along with green lights across the board. The code was perfect, the company's lifeblood secure, and there was this quiet, human satisfaction in knowing that the chaos, the betrayal, the near collapse, it had all led to this, to a company saved, a team restored, a family recalibrated. I reflected a little, thinking about the lessons learned not just about business, but about people. Competence matters. Trust must be earned, not assumed. Titles and appearances are meaningless if they aren't backed by knowledge, skill, and care. And sometimes the people you think will fail you, like Lucas, need to be humbled and guided rather than discarded. They can learn, eventually. But the manipulative, the deceitful, the ones who only see others as assets for personal gain, they cannot be allowed to shape your world. I felt a lightness I hadn't felt in months. It wasn't gloating. It wasn't triumph in a flashy way. It was relief. It was the human satisfaction of having acted decisively, strategically, and with integrity. The people who depended on this company could breathe again. The clients were being served. The staff were working without fear of sudden chaos. I had restored not just the system, but the confidence, the trust, the continuity. Sometimes I caught myself smiling quietly when walking through the warehouse, watching the drivers coordinate efficiently, the clerks moving with purpose. I'd give a nod or a word of encouragement, and I could feel the unspoken acknowledgement that things were under control, that they were being led by someone who cared not just about profits, but about people and the work itself. Dad caught me in one of those quiet moments, leaning against a desk with a cup of coffee. "Elena," he said softly, "you've done more than save the company. You've fixed us, in a way." I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. The office, the warehouse, even the relationships, they were no longer fractured by pride, ignorance, or deceit. They were steady, repaired, functional, and that mattered. I thought about Lucas again. He still had work to do, still had lessons to learn, but he was present now, contributing, listening, aware for the first time that leadership isn't about titles or appearances. It's about showing up when it counts, making informed decisions, and taking responsibility. That small transformation felt meaningful, not satisfying in a dramatic sense, but human, real, and enough. The past months replayed in my mind the fevered mornings, the betrayal, the confrontations, the strategy, the careful execution of control over the Atlas system. Every moment had led here, to this calm, flowing reality where the company, the family, and the work were intact. It was messy, it was imperfect, and yet it was exactly how it should have been. I looked out the window at the yard below. Trucks lined up, engines idling, ready to roll across the country. They carried food, medicine, supplies the lifeblood of so many people's lives. And they were all moving on time. A text buzzed on my phone from Mr. Henderson. Shipment arrived early. Good work, Vance. I smiled, tapping back quickly. The simplicity of the acknowledgement wrapping around me like a small comfort. This was what we did. This was competence in action. Sitting back at my grandfather's desk, I felt a rare moment of quiet. No crises looming, no deceit to uncover, no chaos to manage. The fluorescent light flickered softly above, the hum of the office a steady background noise, and I realized fully that this calm, competent order, this restored flow of work, this human satisfaction was the real victory. Not the arrests, not the ousted sibling, not the legal leverage, but the knowledge that everything I had built, fought for, and protected was functioning as it should, making people's lives possible, and doing so under steady, capable hands. I leaned back, breathed in deeply, and let myself feel it. Relief, accomplishment. Justice served not with spectacle, but quietly, effectively, humanly. And in that moment, I knew we were truly back on track, and that's where we leave it for now. The company is back on track, the chaos has been tamed, and our protagonist has reclaimed control with calm and strategy. It's a story of resilience, intelligence, and timing. And honestly, you never quite know what could happen next. So, if you want to see more stories like this, where strategy meets high stakes and human drama, stick around, hit like, and make sure you're subscribed. You won't want to miss what comes next.